It really is gonna be May, and I'm getting very vintage in the giveaway journal, with warm tones and vibrant golds and little floral details too. Hi, I'm Erin, thank you so much for joining me. If you're not familiar with my giveaway journal project, this is a journal that I completely set up for the first 6 months of 2024, way back in November and December, and then gave away on my channel, and I'll be doing the same thing again for the second half of the year, so keep an eye on my channel next month if you're keen to enter for the next giveaway journal. These frames were actually what inspired the beginnings of this theme. As soon as I saw them, I knew I wanted to put letter stamps behind them, so I knew I needed a month that only had a few letters in it, hence May was the perfect choice. I got these stickers a really long time ago. These lovely frames also came with some books and keys and things in the set that we'll use a little bit later on too. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find them to link, but I will do my very best. Likewise with everything else that I'm using in this video, if it can be linked to, I will have a link to it in the description so you can find it if you'd like. Something I may not be able to link to, unfortunately, is this washi tape that I'm using right now. I got this one from Journal Say originally, and I assumed that it would still be in stock by the time we got to May, but the link is gone, so that's very unfortunate. I have a quote I want to put on the left page, but I'm going to need to erase the pencil marks to be able to put my washi tape and stuff down, so I'm just going to transfer my quote to a post-it so that I still have it. You know, it's funny, at the time I picked up these washi tapes, I got a few others at the same time from the same listing. I just thought these were cool vintage washi tapes, and I have learned so much since then. This is actually a William Morris design, and I had no idea who William Morris was at the time I chose these, but he has in the past 6 months become one of my favorite artists. He seems to be having a bit of a resurgence right now, but the pattern on this particular washi tape is from William Morris's 1881 wallpaper design for St James's Palace in London. He was very against mass-produced things, so the idea of a washi tape with his design on it probably flies in the face of everything that he valued, but I freaking love it, and I just think it's amazing that I can put it in a journal. I have put it sideways on this page though, and it is intended to go vertically, so I'm very sorry, William Morris, please forgive me. I'm pairing it up with a quote from Victor Hugo. This one says, "Frame life so that at some future point, fact and dreaming meet." I'm doing a mix of hand lettering and letter stamps for this one, and I'm going with a very rigid kind of style for the hand lettering, but something that I've been trying to work on a lot lately is actually bouncing my lettering. I've done a little bit of practice in the past in more rigid styles like copperplate, but I absolutely love the look of bouncy calligraphy. I just find it really hard to execute. Mine usually ends up looking a bit unbalanced. I thought it might be a good idea to turn to a pro to help me get my head around this, so I took this class called Bounce Lettering, Learn to Break the Rules to Produce Effortless Looking Calligraphy with Peggy Dean, and it helped so much. Peggy's approach still uses the structure of more classic calligraphy styles like copperplate, so you can practice with lines to mark your baselines and your ascenders and your descenders, but you use them in a way that allows for that variety and flexibility that modernizes the whole appearance. There was one tip Peggy gave that absolutely blew my mind. Just making your vowels smaller gives you instant bounce without throwing off the rest of the word. Genius! If this class sounds like something you might want to try yourself, you need to check out Skillshare, the world's #1 online learning platform for creatives, with thousands of classes taught by world-class teachers, as well as curated learning paths for when you want to dive deep into a topic. They really do have classes on everything creative, so whether you're starting a new creative hobby or looking to upskill as a creative pro, creative writing, social media, animation, marketing, drawing and painting, whatever you want to learn, you can start learning it right now on Skillshare. I was working on a spread to advertise a workshop that I have coming up, and I wanted to do some bounce lettering on that, so have a look at this. Look how much better my bounce lettering is looking already. And for those of us who need a little dopamine hit with our learning, you get a badge when you finish a class and a certificate when you submit your project. The first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Thanks to Skillshare for helping me level up my lettering and for sponsoring this video. I felt like this page was still lacking a little bit of something. I was worried that the washi tape was going to be a lot because it is very heavily patterned, but I thought we still needed a little something to break up those harsh edges, so I'm jumping back in with some shiny washi tape. This one is from MT. It's gold and it's a little bit metallic, but it's not too in-your-face shiny metallic, you know. I didn't have a lot of space left over above and below the washi tapes to work with, so I'm actually putting this one down right on top of the bottom edge at the top part here and the top edge of the lower strip of washi tape. That's confusing to say. So that it actually sits on top of the washi. You can see a bit of the pattern through it. That doesn't bother me too much. And now I'm happy with it, so we can turn the page and we can move on to the calendar spread. When I'm working with something that's as busy as the washi tape that is kind of the feature point, the focal point of this setup, I like to try to make the calendar element a little bit smaller so it doesn't sort of overwhelm the page too much. You don't want to have too much going on in the end or your eye will get tired looking at it, and that's not conducive to good planning. So I'm using an A5 dot grid journal from Scribbles That Matter here. If you're also using an A5 journal, chances are these same measurements will work very well for you if you want to steal this layout for yourself. I've left 10 spaces blank from the top of the page to the top of the first row. And I always just count my calendar boxes from the middle outwards when I'm doing a 2-page calendar setup like this, so each of the boxes are 4 spaces wide by 4 spaces tall. In this kind of system, you're never going to get a fully symmetrical calendar, so I've opted this time to do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday on the right page, and Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday on the left side. I wouldn't be me if I wasn't tearing up some washi tape. Had I known what I was tearing up, I'm not certain anymore that I would have torn it, but maybe I would, you never know. I wanted to have a kind of vertical column decoration down the outside edges of the page, so I'm going to start with the gold washi tape from earlier that I've determined I need as part of this setup. I've decided every time I use one washi tape I also want to use the other, and that's going to help me make a really cohesive theme very easily. So the gold washi is going down the outside edge of the page, and then I'm going to layer the Morris washi tape right next to it. I didn't do the best job tearing this up, I accidentally tore it kind of in half. That's okay, we'll just put it back together and no one will ever need to know, except now you know because I told you and I showed you. We do still have quite a bit of white space left over on this page, particularly on the right side because there are less days of the week featuring on that side of the page. So I thought I'd jump in with some more of these stickers from the set. These ones are not frames, but we have some keys and some cogs and some books. I think they're really pretty. I'm really into keys at the moment. I wanted to layer these in a way that felt like they were still part of the decoration, so I've had them all sit so they're just kissing the design on the sides. And our next spread is going to be for tracking habits, tracking sleep, and tracking mood. Since the whole concept of the giveaway journal is that it's a blank journal ready for someone who's not me to use, I've made sure to include the same trackers and the same key pages in every monthly setup throughout so that if somebody needs one of these as a resource, I don't suddenly kind of take it away from them. So it's always going to be the same pages, but just with a different layout each time for the giveaway journal. On that, if you are interested in winning the giveaway journal for yourself next time, let me know in the comments down below what are some absolutely essential spreads for you so I can kind of work out what the most people like to use and then I can make sure I'm including those in the next version. These ones are pretty boring really, especially after last month's wonderful mood tracker that was a treasure map. If you haven't seen that, I'll pop a link in the top right corner for you here. It's pretty fun. And a link in the description as well, of course. Because of the spacing of these tables, I could have lined them up so that the numbers for each day all perfectly fit, but I wanted to have some sort of alternating design elements going on around them here, so I've lined up the top and the middle ones, which are going to be habits and sleep trackers, and I've offset the bottom one a little bit to the side, so it might make it slightly harder to use in practice, but it will look nicer overall. Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes I'm willing to sacrifice function for pretty, and sometimes I'm not, and apparently in this case, I was. I've left enough room at the top and bottom for the gold washi to sit quite comfortably. I'm trying to space things out so that the page numbers are visible at the bottom here because the Scribbles That Matter journal comes with page numbers printed in, and I've used them in the index for our winner in case they want to refer to things, so I'm trying not to cover them, but sometimes it's unavoidable. Keeping the stamps going here so that there's a nice cohesive theme going on, I'm adding the headings for each tracker sideways along the edges of it, alternating sides, and I'm using markers to do that. These ones are from Archer and Olive. I'm very sorry, again I can't link to these ones. This is getting frustrating, isn't it? They came with a subscription box. They were kind of limited edition with that subscription box, but I will link to some similar Tombos for you, so if you want to get brown, you can get similar ones. And I quite often just use my markers with my stamps because then I have a greater range of colors, especially with little letter stamps like this. It works fine. I recommend it. Here's a little rundown on how all of these trackers actually work. The top one is for habits, so in this space here you can write down any habits that you'd like to track. I've maybe left a bit too much room, but anyway. Across from that is each number and initial for each day of the week, so you can pop a little mark in the space when you have completed the habit. Under that is the sleep section. There's a couple of ways you can do this. You can add the hours that you expect to sleep. That's how I usually do it if I'm doing a sleep tracker. So I'll say from like 10 until 7 or something like that and add those hours here. Then I would make a bar graph of the time I went to sleep to the time that I woke up. But you could also just make this the number of hours slept. So you could do, from the bottom 1 up to the top, maybe 10 hours or something, and then just track how many hours you actually slept. For the mood section down the bottom here, I'm just quickly going to add some smiley faces as a gauge. So it'll be kind of neutral in the middle. Up the top of the graph is happy and at the bottom is sad. I was thinking a bar graph again for this one, where you would just draw a line up to the point that you were feeling that day, which allows for quite a bit of nuance. But if you wanted it to look different to the sleep tracker, you could do this as a line graph instead. So you can add a little dot and join each day with a line, and then you'd get a bit of a curve, a bit of a pattern of your mood throughout the month. Our next page here I'm calling the Snapshot. In my own journal, I kind of just call this Goals, Favorites and Musings, so it's the same concept here, but I wanted to give it a title for the giveaway journal. I do feel like these are very self-explanatory names for each of these sections, but I'll go into it a little bit anyway, and I have made my heading here a bit off-center. Let's try to ignore that, shall we? So the goals section is for setting goals for the month. If you have set overarching goals for the whole year, this is a good place to break them down into smaller, more achievable chunks. Even better if you made a plan for how you're going to attack them throughout the year. This is a place to decide what point of the plan you're up to and make some smaller goals. The favorite section is for anything that you're really enjoying right now. That can be favorite foods or colors or TV shows, movies, music, video games, anything at all that you're having a good time with can go in the favorite section. It just gives you an idea of kind of what you were into at this time in your life. Fun to look back on. And the musing section is kind of a mini brain dump where you can just write down anything that's on your mind right now. It can be things that you're looking forward to, that you have coming up, things that you're really excited about, that you're really happy about, achievements that you've achieved. Could be things you're worried about, that could be things that are going on in the world right now that are making you feel a little bit uncomfortable. These ones are also really interesting to look back on because you can kind of get a gauge of what was going on in the world and in your life in that particular year. The facing page is for the spending tracker, which is a place for, obviously, tracking spending. Anytime you buy something, you can write it down in the spending tracker and categorize it into categories that you can set as well. And this all corresponds to an overarching kind of full year tracker that's back at the beginning of the journal or first 6 months of the year. I was in a lovely video collaborating with many other bullet journal creators recently over on Jashi Corinne's channel, and I talked a bit in that about how having a cash flow tracker at the beginning of a journal is a must-have for me. So I'll pop a link to that up in the top right corner if you'd like to see it, and down in the description as well. Financial literacy is just something that I think isn't taught in schools or anything, or sometimes isn't taught by family members, and is something that's really beneficial to know. So that's why I love my spending trackers so much. You can probably tell I feel quite passionately about this anyway. We have sections for item, category, and cost for everything that you spend over the course of the month, and then a category section down the bottom so you can tally things up by category and work out how much you spent across all of them. I tend not to go into too much detail each time because I've been doing my spending trackers the exact same way for basically like 4 years. So anyway, we've moved on one more page now. We're on to, this is going to be the meal planner. This is a page that when I use it, I find is really, really helpful to me. Partly, again, in terms of saving money, because if you know what's in your fridge and you have some pre-planned meals sorted out, then you're going to save some money by not getting tempted by takeaway food or dining out or buying like a quick microwave meal at the last minute. I am actually pretty bad with food. I will quite often just forget to eat. So this helps me to kind of be like, well, this is what I'm eating today. So that's sorted out. I don't have to think about it anymore. It's no longer a mental burden, you know? I've set this one up just like it's a calendar, but I've made sure the boxes are a little bit bigger than on the general calendar that we did earlier, partly so the page looks different so it's easier to differentiate at a glance, but also partly so that there's more space for planning in each of those boxes. So these ones are 5 spaces tall by 5 spaces wide, which is 1 box bigger in each direction than the previous calendar. And I've also added an extra space above each one of those so that I can put the number in there and it doesn't take up any of the planning room inside each calendar box as well. The decoration style is also basically the same, where I'm laying down the gold washi on the outside edge and then layering a little bit of the patterned washi tape over the top of that. I've torn it to match the size of the space so it's not taking up too much room because it is a very wide washi tape. And then the wider strip that I tore off, I'm just adding to the other side because there is a little bit more room to play with there, because once again I've just put Friday, Saturday and Sunday on the right page while the rest are on the left. Then we just need to stamp in the title and add some stickers and we'll be ready to move on to the next page. I don't have much of a name for this one. I'm kind of just calling it the spare spread because I'm setting this journal up for somebody who is not me, and I don't necessarily know how they're going to need to use it, so I'm making sure in each setup that I give them a page or a spread that is pre-decorated, ready to go, but also blank in the middle so that they can use it to plan anything that maybe I didn't think of or didn't cover elsewhere in the setup. That means I want to leave a lot of space because I don't know how this page might get used, and also if the person doesn't have a use for it, then maybe they'll just use it to add another quote page or junk journal with some extra stuff. I'm a pretty go big or go home kind of decoration girl, but I'm trying to keep it minimal here, and I want to dedicate this page to the wonderful Kimberly of Mooncraft Bujo, who is the queen of the corner collage. This is a little bit inspired by her wonderful corner collages, although mine are a little bit bigger and bolder than hers, I think. Hers are so beautiful. Now that all of our functional spreads are done, we can move on to the first of the weeklies, and there are quite a few weeklies for May. Typically I like to keep my weeks together in my weeklies, although I've recently started doing it a bit differently in my own journal, but sometimes that means that days from the previous month will end up in the next month's weekly spreads, and sometimes at the end of the month as well. May 2024 actually starts on a Wednesday, and I like all of my weeklies and my calendars to start with Mondays rather than Sundays, so that means that 5 of the days in this first weekly will fall into May, but the first 2 are technically still from April. And then something similar will happen at the end of the month of May as well, where the final day of the month technically is a Friday, but then the Saturday and Sunday fall into June. So in the interest of keeping full weeks together, I'm going to put those couple of June days into the May weekly as well, which means we're going to end up with 5 weeklies for the month of May. This first weekly is a pretty easy one to set up. It has 8 boxes, so you've got 7 there for planning on particular days, and the last one is just for general notes, maybe planning things that'll happen next week. If you wanted to set up a page like this for yourself, all you'll need to do is know where the middle of the page is, which is actually really easy in the Scribbles That Matter journal because it has a marker for that. I like to leave 2 spaces between each of my boxes and 2 spaces from the edge for all of these boxes as well. So if you find that middle point, you can count 1 box up and 1 box to the right and left of it, and there's your kind of 2 box spacing in the middle of the page, and just make sure that you're leaving 2 spaces blank at the top, on the left, on the right, and at the bottom of the page as well, and then you've got your spacing for these lovely boxes. As far as decoration for this one, I wanted to make those frames really work for me again, so I've alternated the boxes that I'm putting them on, so there's 2 on the top row and 2 on the bottom row, and they're not kind of lined up with each other. The other days I'm just leaving blank, they don't have a frame to go around them or anything, but it was still looking a little bit too bare, so I'm going to jump back in with my washi tape. I'm going to tear a really thin strip of it and just lay that in the space on the far left and the far right sides of the spread. This one I'm actually not adding any of the gold washi tape to. I feel like there's enough going on here already, and once you add your planning in those spaces as well, there's going to be even more happening on the page, so I think it was fine to leave this one without any shiny gold. If you think of that last spread as being vertical boxes because they are taller than they are wide, then you can kind of think of this one as the horizontal equivalent. You still have 4 boxes to a page, but this time they are wider than they are tall, and that means they take up pretty much the whole page as well. If you're someone who tends to make a to-do list for yourself every day that is unachievably long, maybe try out a horizontal layout because you just can't fit as many things into the space as you can if it's vertical. Instead of leaving 2 dot grid spaces between each box like we did on the last one, this time I'm only going to leave 1, and I'm also leaving 1 blank at the very top of the page, 1 blank on the left side, 1 blank on the right side, and then 2 blank spaces at the bottom of the page. Again, if you're also working in an A5 journal, you can probably steal these verbatim and get the exact same layout as me, but if your journal is a different size, you're going to have to do some maths, do some calculating, and work out how this would fit onto your own page size. My idea here had been to actually alternate which side the name for each day and the number went on, and then I got a little too in the zone and I forgot to move the Tuesday to the right side, the Thursday was going to go on the right side, so on and so forth. Doesn't matter, it still worked out a perfectly functional layout, but it did mean I had to adapt the way I was going to decorate, because alternating would have meant that I could put these frames around the title for every single one of the days, and I can no longer do that, unfortunately. But necessity breeds invention, as they say, so rather than having a frame around every day, because they will overlap if I try to do that now. Also, I fully intended to do the Wednesday and the Monday on this page, but again, I got in the zone and I kind of ruined it. Necessity breeds invention, so instead we will use the non-frame stickers from the set, the books and the keys instead, to decorate the right sides of the blank ones, and look, we've still got a balanced page, so it's fine. I was feeling a little bit burned from messing up on the previous, so I thought I'd go with a classic for me. This is the one I call my Ruthie boxes. I used this in my own pages for my April setup with my dragon theme that I painted, and I have used it so many times before I couldn't even count them, but it's a bit of a tricky one to set up, so it's difficult to describe the spacing here. Actually, do you know what? If you imagine that you were going to set up the horizontal layout that we did on the previous spread, but instead of taking the boxes all the way across the page, you just take them to the center and you alternate where they sit. So obviously on the Monday, I've got the Monday box on the left, Tuesday on the right, Wednesday on the left, and then on the other side, you've got Thursday on the right. Friday and Saturday actually are both on the same row, and then Sunday is the bottom level. And then the gaps around those are where we're going to put our pretty things. So if you also wanted to try setting up this page, it would probably be easiest to pencil sketch out the previous spread and then find the horizontal center of the page, which is going to be the vertical middle line, and then just erase the boxes in the areas that you don't need them. I think that would be the easiest way to approach this if it's your first time setting up this spread. I call it the Ruthie layout, by the way, because I stole it from Ruthie Journals on Instagram. She does the best weekly layouts, and this is one of my absolute favorites of hers. It doesn't look like it has a lot of space, but it actually has heaps of room for adding decoration and still heaps of room for planning day to day. So that's why it's one of my go-tos. Go-tos? Should that be goes to? That's why it's one of my goes to, like mothers-in-law. I don't know. English is hard. Big apologies to you now because I didn't realize when my camera stopped recording, so we've missed the end of this setup and the beginning of the next one, but this one I've also thieved from Ruthie Journals. This one is a really interesting kind of gridded horizontal layout. You still have 4 spaces on the left and 4 spaces on the right page for planning for each day of the week, but you also have a little bit of room at the top of the left page and at the bottom of the right page for a little strip of decor. The section where I'm writing the name and the number for each day is 8 spaces in from the left side and also 8 spaces tall. So if you wanted to set this up, you can count from the bottom of the page 8 spaces up. That'll be your first horizontal line, another 8 spaces up from that, again and again for the left page. Or you can start from the top on the right side and count 8 spaces down, and of course 8 spaces in as well to determine that horizontal space for the column where you write the name for each day. And then you just add some decoration to those empty spaces on the top of the left page and the bottom of the right page, and you are all set with your weekly. This is a quick one to set up. I haven't used any of the gold washi in a while, so I thought this would be an excellent opportunity to bring it back, make sure it still feels like it's part of the theme. So I'm going to line each of those decorative areas with that right at the edge of the page, a little torn piece of my patterned washi right next to it. And I wasn't totally sure how I wanted to incorporate the stickers here because they are obviously quite busy themselves. Putting them over an already busy washi tape is kind of going to have them get lost, so I ended up just cutting a frame in half that had some kind of nice bold light coloured flowers on it and sticking that on either side and just calling it a day there, you know, on that spread. We've got one more weekly left to do for this month, and this one is also going to be a horizontal layout. This one has the space for each of the days kind of hard up against each other in a bit of a stack on each side of the page, and then a bar of decoration along the outside edges of the page. If you start counting horizontally from the outside edge, I've left 10 spaces blank for that decorative area, and I've left 1 space blank at the very top of the page and 1 space blank at the bottom as well. So each of those daily areas where we're going to do the actual planning is now 9 spaces tall. Also, I have to give a big shout out to this pen because it's amazing for pretty lettering in really small spaces. I was put onto this one by Icy from Icy Studios. It's the Pilot Fude Masake pen, and it has this lovely, tiny, soft, flexible tip, so it's really good for that. It's not my favorite pen for lettering, but it's my favorite pen for lettering small things. Now, guess how we're gonna decorate the sides here? You got it. We're gonna do gold on the outsides. We're gonna do a strip of washi alongside that. I'm actually just using some washi that I'd already cut down, so it's kind of narrower, which is gonna allow me a little bit more white space to put the stickers down as well, because we can't not have the stickers. This is the last one. And whatever stickers and washi tape I had left, I actually bundled up with this journal and sent along to the winner. And here's how it all looked when it all came together. I hope you've enjoyed this little look into 1800s floral wallpaper in my journal. Very unexpected, but I'm so excited with the way it came out. Also, these warm tones, very outside my usual wheelhouse. I upload videos once a week, and next week's video will be my May setup in my own bullet journal, so stick around for that. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to make sure you get to see that. Don't forget to use the link in the description down below to get your free trial of Skillshare, but only if you're in the first 500 people to click the link, so you'll want to be snappy. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I've had a wonderful time and I hope you have too. If this May theme isn't quite your vibe, last year I did something very pretty with some green paper and lots of fairy stickers, so if you're into the fantasy stuff, there is a link to that one on the top right side of the screen right now, and underneath that is a playlist of all of the setups that I've made for this giveaway journal so far. Enjoy! I'll catch you again soon. Bye!